Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I am Alex. With me always is Ethan. And today we are doing part 3 of our series on taking advice. So if you have not listened to parts 1 and 2, they should be in our podcast feed. In part 1, we talked about getting advice from parents and older family members. Part 2, we talked about our peers, whether that's our friends or whether that's, parents of classmates. And today we are talking about getting advice from total strangers, which is much less of a specific group of people, but I think comes in all shapes and sizes, and can be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
So how are you doing today, Ethan? Again,
I would say I'm about the same as the last two episodes. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm running a little bit out of steam, right?
Yeah.
But I'm here. So we're not doing wins and losses this episode. We are working on the dad bod because we have neglected that for weeks as it
Yes.
appears in your feed.
Right.
But no, this is our way in. So if you listen to our dad draft episode, our TV dad draft episode, we're recording with the week after that, right? So
Yeah.
this is right after that. It's been a while since we've checked in, but it has not been that long in real time. So we're actually going to start with that since we did wins and losses, and three of those is just a bridge too far for us.
Yeah.
It's a lot of in the middle for us in life. So anyway,
And you'd think at this point, what would this be, episode like 24, that we'd be better at like writing down wins and losses as they happen. But no, I still come to the recording and I'm just kind of like, what can I talk about?
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, working on the dad bod. I feel like you always go first, so I'm going to go first this time.
Okay. All right.
So last time weighed in, I was at like 185, I think 185.2. I weighed in yesterday, and I was at 183. Now, if you remember my weigh-in before that, I was actually lower than 183. I was like 182.4. I had not been the most diligent with counting my calories over the week, but I had mentioned that like I had taken on like extra carbs. Like I was not watching my protein intake as much as it was like not overeating calories. And so there was definitely a lot of water weight. In fact, I got down to about 183 the day after that recording. I told Ethan, like, I had just drinking a lot of water, and you can tell. You ever go in the bathroom in the morning, you look in the mirror and you're like, my face feels puffy or my face feels like thin. And it's like, to me is just the telltale sign of like, is there like a lot of water weight going on? Does my face look anything different than yesterday? So I think really what happened is I got rid of that water weight. I probably stayed around the same, maybe gained a little bit. But for me, biggest thing is like, I have just had a lot of weird days, weird meals, a little more like eating out or going places and not being diligent about recording. And I had really gotten in this phase where we weren't eating out a lot. And so like I could sit there and with leftovers for lunch and like me in charge of cooking dinner, I could take my breakfast and my lunch and I could sort of create patterns and like optimize it and go, well, if I do this, then I hit my protein goal and I can have a beer tonight and like plan out my meals for the day. And, as I mentioned a couple episodes ago, today I was at Disney World, and like there's only so much planning that you can do when you're dragging two kids under 5 through Disney World, right? So there's just been a few of those days where it feels like I've had to ad lib and I've not been able to be as like diligent on it, which is kind of how I want to live my life. So like trial by fire here. But yeah,
Sure.
probably always going to end with peak weight loss results.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that the kind of we basically called for both of us how our weight loss was going to go. When we last checked in, it was I had gained 3.5 pounds basically on my birthday weekend because there was also a wedding. So my last three weigh-ins from recordings are there was 189, then 192.6 coming back from that birthday weekend. I'm back down to 191. So now that I'm like back in
Yeah,
um, my normal rhythm, I'm, trending back to where I was. I will say, I'm not going to call it a game changer, but
your new
I did,
toy.
yeah. So, a little bit of background. I never remember what I want for my birthday. My mom happened to be in town about 2 months ago, and we were walking back from dropping my girls off at preschool, and I said to her, "Hey, write this down. This is what I want for my birthday, and I am not going to remember when you ask me. So this is your opportunity to actually get me something that I want." So I totally forgot what I had told her. I remember having the conversation, but so the other day, my a package arrived in the mail, and it was both a complete surprise and exactly what I wanted. Kind of the best way I've ever received a gift in my life. And my parents got me an under the desk elliptical. And so my
Nice.
goal has been to ellipticize, if that's the word, um,
It's not.
Two. Okay. Well, I'm gonna ellipticize. My goal is 2 hours every workday at a minimum, if I can. So while I'm working at home. So today's a Wednesday. I worked from home Monday and Tuesday. I hit the 2 hour mark each time in like 30-minute increments because that's when it stops you. But like, what's cool is that while I'm just sitting there minding my own business, like listening to a phone call, I am moving, and I
Yeah.
never broke a sweat, but my body did warm up. I felt that something was happening, and you know, at least I felt like I was keeping my heart rate going, and I hope that on the margins it'll work. It
Well, I
should
think
in no
I
way
mean,
like
it's like getting more steps in. I think it's just
yeah
a good solid thing. I mean, it's definitely something where I'm curious to see how it goes because I may get one of those myself or something like it. That I can sit there and do at the desk because it's not that this has ever been a competition. This working on the dad bod has ever been a competition at all. So it's not that I want to race you, under
sure
the desk
sure
elliptical speed, but at the same
yeah.
time, like I can't let you get a leg up in this non-competition.
Right, right.
So yeah,
Well, just have a birthday, tell your parents what you want, forget
I,
about it,
I,
be
I plan on
surprised.
having a birthday about every year, so should be good.
Mm,
I will say
that
from a
seems
gift
excessive.
remembering perspective, I actually use a website called like Gift Registry 360 or something like that, or
Mm,
My Gift Registry 360. And I use that and I just have like a link to, and I change it from my birthday list to maybe I sometimes turn it into a Father's Day list, but it mostly oscillates between my birthday list and my Christmas list. And I just change the title. So it's the same
mhm.
link. And I just have that where as I think of things, I add it to that list. Like I've got the app on my phone and I've got the Chrome extension. So that if I'm ever browsing, I can like file it away in there so that I don't forget those things. And then like
Smart.
a month after my birthday, go, that was much better than the thing I actually asked for. Now I
Right,
remembered it again.
right,
So
right.
I do that, and that way it's always the same link, so people know where to look at it, and I can send it out to everybody who's asking. Right? It's like I can send it to my mom, I can send it to my dad, I can send it to my wife, I can send it to my in-laws, and it also creates this situation of like everybody that is gift giving because it's a registry.
Right.
When they buy it, it checks it off the list, so the next person can't come and buy it after them, which is very handy
Very
and very
nice.
nice.
Smart.
So I,
Make it
I, I
look
would plug
individual.
that as a solution to anybody struggling with that particular problem. But that is not the problem we are
No.
tackling tonight. Tonight we are tackling probably one of the things that like I mentioned. I can get, I think there's some passionate disagreement that happens when we're talking with our parents, and I think
Hmm.
there's some gamesmanship when talking with our peers and getting advice from our peers. I think there. You okay over there?
I hope so.
All right. And that's it for the. No, just kidding. Ethan needs to sleep. Um, But when talking with complete strangers, I would say just the sheer gall and just being
Yeah.
taken aback is my most predominant feeling. And so I get things, pieces of advice. This is the one where the ratio of like mutual respect and to like being pissed off, that ratio is just so out of whack that I'm like,
Yeah.
I I don't need you to be here. And so this is the toughest one for me to get advice from. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think that strangers honestly should mind their own business unless they are truly being helpful. Like the other day, I was at the farmers market and I didn't notice that my baby's shoe, like she like kicked it off in the stroller. So somebody poked me on the shoulder and said, "Your baby's shoe fell." That's very helpful. Thank you for the advice that I should pick that up, and thank you for letting me know. Otherwise, I don't need you to come in and tell me what it is that we are, um, what it is you think I should be doing. So
Right.
one of the biggest examples I can think of, it was pretty jarring. So this was like 3.5 years ago, pre-pandemic. I was taking at my toddler was a 3 month old at the time. I was taking her to visit my wife at work since it was my day home with the baby. My wife was working. It's how we were splitting our time, both
Yeah.
working, part time and using our leave.
Right. Right.
And I'm waiting to get onto the metro. It was a February day in DC, so must have been like in the 50s, but I was wearing her, so there was the body to body heat, and I had a jacket on, but it was a big jacket, and like I had it over the baby.
Okay.
She was fine.
Sure.
Woman comes up to me on the metro platform and is just like, that baby needs a jacket. And I kind of, you know, was like just in such shock that she like came up to me, given the fact how I just described, I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
the baby wrapped up in my jacket and like had the stroller with me. Like, so I was like wearing her despite having the stroller because I wanted her to be warm.
Right.
And it took all of my willpower not to just like
Yeah.
tell this woman to f off, especially because to be honest, like she was not dressed weather appropriately either. So I kind of just want to be like, well, you can't even dress yourself, so why the hell are you interfering with my business? So anyway, it was one of those things where I would say that was like the most jarring experience I've ever had with a stranger's parenting advice. But what about you?
Yeah. So mine is once again sort of a strikingly similar example, um, but it's socks, right? Socks are the thing that I feel like the older generation believes this myth that you like lose more heat through your feet. And so people are
Mm,
obsessed with making sure that babies have socks,
yeah.
right? And fine, that comes from your parents. They buy them socks, whatever, they have socks on. I don't care if the kid has socks on. But I would be taking, and especially my son was home with us until he was a year old before he could start at daycare. And so that meant quite a few times that he and I would spend the weekdays, and we might go into a grocery store. And this kid's 6, 7, 8 months old, can sit up in the cart, can talk with me, can be alert and do all that stuff, be present in the situation. But he's not walking anywhere, and I'm not letting him crawl across the grocery store floor. And it's Florida. Socks and shoes were not necessary. Like, because I was not like, oh, while I'm picking out the mango and the corn and the milk and the cheese and the bacon and all the things I want, do I want to make sure that his outfit is complete, his ensemble is complete? Like, I'm wearing gym shorts and flip flops. I'm not concerned. Footwear is not the concern. And so I've had multiple people over these times in various stores be like, oh my goodness, are your feet getting cold? Talking to my son past me like I
Right.
was a wall, like I wasn't there. Oh my goodness, are your feet getting cold? And I'm like, yeah, Florida baby, and like
Mhm.
this is this is where I struggle the most with self-control because like with peers, with parents, I have this wall, this block that says, Alex, you are going to have to interact with these people
Right.
again. Do
Right.
not be the jerkiest jerk you can jerk. When a
Hmm.
stranger does that, all of my self-control is I want to wreck them
Yeah.
right
No, I'm
now
100% with
for
you.
having
Yeah.
the gall. And so I'll be like, yeah, silly Florida baby. His feet do get cold at 70 degrees inside in the AC.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, you have got to like actually be kidding me with some of those things. And so this is the place where I struggle, online. And I get this, right? I get this. Online, we are people who are disseminating our experiences. And I have that that preface in there because we are disseminating our experiences. I wouldn't go so far as calling it advice in so much
Hmm.
as like we might say try some things. Again, going back to the peanut butter and carrot stick example, right? Of
Right.
a dinner alternative. Like that is advice for something for you to try, but again, the method of delivery we have always tried to convey is this is our experience. If you can take that and it inspires you and let's say it's a decision you need to make with your doctor also clears it in those kind of scenarios, fine, take that, run with it, but do not treat it like we are using only data backed sources here and are trying to come off as thought leaders ourselves. And so it is also tough, and I realize we are online giving this pieces of wisdom, experience, advice, whatever you want to call it, but it is also frustrating to be getting online advice from strangers, right?
Hmm.
Whether that's in comment sections, on your own posts, or if you're in like any like Facebook groups or larger chats or places where you experience other dads that you don't really know that well, if at all, kind of thing. That's always one of the toughest places to get feedback. And it feels like that is also an arena, like we were talking about with peers, where that becomes a like for lack of a better term, a pissing contest, right? Of like how I did it is the best way, and my kids turned out the best, and I've got to defend everything I've ever chosen. But it's more infuriating because you don't have that connection, and maybe you don't
Hmm.
have that experience. Maybe you stay out of those cesspools.
No, I mean, I definitely am in them, and it can be really frustrating sometimes, and just like sometimes I hate that I feel the need to be the bigger person. Like in that situation, you know, like I, it sounds like that the are your feet getting cold in the supermarket has happened more than once, or like a version of that has happened more than
Yeah,
once.
being concerned about both of
Yeah.
my kids, because this happened with my daughter
Right.
too, but with both of my kids, people being overly concerned about them. They could be in long sleeves, long pants, and just not have socks on and be worried about how this kid on a June day is going to be cold.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, again, this is Florida.
Yeah.
It's not North Florida either. Like,
Right.
there's no premise. Like, yeah, I get it. Upper 60s, we wear pants and maybe hoodies. I get it.
Yeah.
We're wimps. But,
Yeah.
like,
No.
it's not, like, actually, like, the kid's not about to get hypothermia,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't know. I probably would have said, I don't know. Didn't you move here to die in the heat? And then, like, same thing. So, like,
Yeah,
I
that
think,
would
right?
have been even less nice. But,
Yeah. No, I again, maybe it's just because it's late now, and we're both getting a little frisky with our as in the order in which we recorded these. But yeah, I mean, I think the sometimes I just wish strangers would like stay strange and
yeah.
leave
Yeah,
us alone.
it's one of those things that, like, I notice from men of a certain age especially, right? And it doesn't lead into advice, but like men of a certain age, especially, have this like innate desire, and maybe we will get there. Maybe it's generational or maybe it's an age marker, but they just have this like urge that they see somebody and like they're passing by them and they must make small talk. Like, and it is not an American thing because the most vivid example, like, I could think of countless examples where it's like I'm getting my kid's shoes on and like somebody says, "Oh, yeah, I got to struggle with those left ones." And it's just like, the worst joke you've ever heard, a waste of breath. Why did they say it? I don't know you. We're not having a conversation. You're walking past me to never be seen again. What was the point of that? But the most vivid example I have was actually my wife and I in Australia one time. We were in Australia and we had gotten some sandwiches and we were sitting on a park bench. And this guy like walks by us and he's like, "Ah, sandwiches." And it reminded me of the scene. Have you ever seen Dumb and Dumber with Jim
Yeah.
Carrey? He's coming out of the gas station and he stops next to these other guys that are standing there and goes, "Ah, big gulps, huh?
Yeah.
All right, see ya," and keeps on going. I'm like that is a comedy bit, and like there are people who do that with 100% like genuine, like this is a thing I need to do. But when it comes to advice, like it often feels like if there is a husband and wife combo, the husband breaks the ice with this method, and then the wife comes in with a, "Oh, what a cute baby. Oh, you really should. Oh, I had three myself." They give their qualifiers, they state their resume of why I'm about to come in, why I just met you, and why I'm about to tell you something. And it's
Right.
like, "Oh, you really got to do this. I did this with my kids." And I was like, and what I want to say is, lady, that was the Depression. Times were different,
True.
but again, like you, I don't want to be mean. Where it's just like, what is your investment in this kid? Unlike our friends, it's like you don't have a vested interest in me as a friend. What is your vested interest in my kid? Because unlike some of our peers, it's not, they're going to be classmates. Don't have the vested interest of being a grandparent. What is, like I get wanting to like be nice and be helpful, and I know plenty of people genuinely think they are doing it. But there are so many times where it's just like with unsolicited advice that people are addressing problems that don't exist or ones that they have fabricated, and feeling like it is their moral duty to correct everybody is so like it's exhausting.
It's almost as if the real life unfunny version of the progressive commercials where it's like we can't help you from becoming your parents, but we can help you save.
Yeah,
It's just the real life version of that's just so terrible.
Well, it is because I'm like these things are funny, but they're funny because they are just slam packed with truth, right? The progressive commercials, and but it's the same kind of thing where and so obviously I think we're talking about people of a certain age in that category, but then I think like the other one I cannot stand, and we didn't really get into this with peers, but I kind of want to get into it now because I think they more fall into this bucket anyway. And this could be friends we have that don't have kids, or peers, or just strangers, or people who are childless, or people who are empty nesters and have been so far away from children for a while that it's like, let's say you choose to go out to a restaurant and your kid's acting up and somebody decides to pass by you and say something, right? Like people have opinions on that. Some people are like, a crying child needs to leave the restaurant immediately. Other people are like, just mind your own business and have your own dinner, and all sorts of variations in between. But like going out someplace and your child is not behaving, and usually 9 out of 10 people are going to be supportive and understanding and be like, that mom or dad's going through it. But there's always that 10th person that is just sort of like, why would you bring your kid here if they can't behave, like kind of thing, or like you need to teach your kid how to act, and like not having the wherewithal or the life experience to go, you don't understand. She wants 3 chocolate chips, and if I put 2 in the pancakes, she's a puddle on the floor. And like you
Yeah,
say that to a sane adult and that doesn't have kids, and they're gonna be like, excuse me, what? And you're like, no, kids melt down over the dumbest things, like dumber than you can comprehend. Like SNL cannot make skits this dumb, right?
fact.
Like it just, yeah. And so that is, as you can tell, I'm like exasperated with that. But it's like the idea that you go out somewhere. Sometimes it's a store, sometimes it's a grocery store or Home Depot or something, and your kid's just not behaving. Like they're just not, I don't love the word necessarily behaving, but they're loud, they're obnoxious,
Hmm.
they're crying, they're upset over something, but you've got to push through. Or maybe
Hmm.
you wanted to go out to dinner because like it just kind of felt easier than dealing with the kids at home that night. And it's not
And
been
you want
easy.
it,
It's not been easy.
yeah.
And granted, I will say this: we are not the type of people who take our kids into restaurants that aren't like kid restaurants. Like we really try to, and then we try to get babysitting to go out on our own to other restaurants, kind of thing. Because it just like, or we're going out to one of those restaurants as like a family with multiple grandparents, and so like the kids are just heavily outnumbered, and
Hmm.
that kind of scenario. But the people that give you dirty looks when you got kids in a restaurant or kids in a store, and and I've gotten a comment once or twice, and they it's one of those meltdowns of like I can't get a lollipop, right?
Right.
Or I can't get this, that, or the other. And it's just like, yeah, you can't. And now you're in the checkout line, and I've spent 30 minutes shopping for the exact nails that we need to finish this project that we're doing in the yard that we have to get done today. And there's a lady over there looking at me like, why did I bring my kid into Home Depot if my kid couldn't behave, and saying something to that matter? And
Right.
that's dumb and stupid.
Agreed. Yeah, I think ultimately we would be better as a society if people minded their own business, and didn't vote to get into other people's business as well. So that's all I'll say
Yeah,
about that.
I will. I would also add, like, I think we as a society would be better, and this is more of like an attainable, less like a "I want world peace" kind of thing. But like, for any like entrepreneurs or venture capitalists, whatever, I think one thing you could absolutely do, and this is to brag on my hometown a little bit, but one thing you could absolutely do is make more kid friendly dining experiences, right? Like, and obviously this becomes easier in places like Florida, but I think you see a lot of examples a lot of times amongst like the beer garden community, like brewery communities, like the kind of places that
Most kid friendly.
feel like social hubs. But we have a place here in Stewart. The breweries are great, but we have a place here in Stewart called Collab Kitchen, and there's a farm out in the western part of the county that they own, and they source all their produce, all their fresh stuff from that farm, and this is their downtown restaurant. And outside this restaurant, like, it is one of the better restaurants in Stewart. The food is fresh and it's creative and it's really good. But what they have outside is they have inside seating, they have outside seating, and then past that, they have turfed the whole area, right? So there's not going to be fire ant piles, which is a real concern or whatever. But then they've got giant stackable Lego like blocks. They've got like interlocking like panels and things that you can make like cubes and houses out of. They've got stepping stones. They have just got kid stuff everywhere, cornhole boards, like kid stuff everywhere. And it's just this giant turfed space. And so you can sit there and have this like really elevated dinner, and we go and they've got really great craft cocktails that they have like a happy hour where they're $5 for their craft cocktails. And it's like we'll go sit there and have a cocktail and have like some smoked brisket and some nice
Mm.
stuff, and the kids are running around being hooligans, and both are coexisting because they've
Yeah,
thought through that in the space. And like it, so obviously I'm mad at the people that are giving me dirty looks or advice, but I'm also mad. I'm not mad at Home Depot. Home Depot's doing the best it can. It has race car carts, and my kids get down there, and thank God those steering wheels don't actually work because like we would just be crashing into everything.
No.
But like there are plenty of restaurants where I've gotten dirty looks, or I've seen other people having a tough time getting dirty looks, and you know that kid should behave, or some sort of comment like that. Where it's just like I also wish there were more alternatives here to have a decent dinner and have my kids entertained.
Agreed. I think there should be a premium on kid friendly establishments. And I will also just plug one. There's a,
I think it's
in,
good for business.
it really is. There's this brewery out in Olney, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes outside of DC in Montgomery County. And they opened during the pandemic, but basically it's like the tap room's indoor outdoor, and then it's this huge field, which again like similar farm setup, but they basically just put a ginormous rock wall jungle gym playground at the brewery
Yeah,
so that families can just spend the day there, and
yeah.
it's just good business,
And,
good
and
vibes, happy
and it
times.
doesn't have to be necessarily that elaborate. It can be one of those like lawn Connect Four things,
Yeah,
the
yep.
giant Jenga towers. There are a ton of ways to go about this with simple things that aren't going to break the bank for a restaurant. You do have to have the space, which I know can be a premium if we're talking about, inner DC real estate, like getting
Sure.
more space and hoping that works out. But, in suburban areas where you might have more space to work with, making those things kid friendly.
Right.
Because the things like, blocks and Connect Fours and um, plastic horseshoes, not metal horseshoes for obvious reasons, or cornhole boards or something like that, can be a really good way to get the kids involved. And I think it has become something because the problem you have to worry about is not like whether or not you're going to do it as a business owner. I think you got to worry about is somebody else going to do it? Because as soon
Mm-hmm.
as somebody else does it, then they become the preferred destination, right?
Yep.
And I've seen that a lot. Like we have seen so many fellow parents uncoordinated at Collab Kitchen because they're just like, "Yep, I want a nice cocktail, I want some nice food, and I want my kids to get the let out."
Yep. Yep.
And we're accomplishing all those, and nobody else has got. Very few other places have that.
No, it's just
So
good. It's just good business.
yeah, for sure.
So here's what I'll say to all business owners we don't know. Here's your unsolicited stranger advice from Ethan and Alex. Be more kid friendly.
Yeah, but I will say this as well. Last thing I will say about stranger advice, not about kid friendly restaurants, but the last thing I will say about stranger advice is I think this is the easiest one. As much as I'm like, "Psh, go somewhere, I want nothing to do with your advice." This is also the easiest one for me to completely dismiss, right?
Sure.
And ignore
Because you
and
don't
let
have to
go of.
engage again.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just like don't have to engage in it, but I don't spend any mental thought later on it, right? Like we're
Right.
talking
Right.
about with like peers where it's like, oh, maybe I go back and look at that and see if they actually have a point because they seem like a pretty well informed person.
Right.
Like I don't do that with most strangers' advice. Like, excuse me, they would have to come at me a very certain way with a very certain tact, of like, hey, it looks like you were struggling with this. Do you mind if I give you some advice and like I say yes and then they give it, right? It would have to be a very specific type of interaction there for me
Sure.
to take the advice seriously. Um, and so that does make it easier. It makes it more appalling when it happens, but it also just makes it easier to go, have a great life.
Yep. Yeah. That's very true.
So, anything else you want to add on stranger danger advice?
No, I'm good. I think we've exhausted all of our advice on advice
I
over
also
these last
think
two
we've exhausted
episodes.
ourselves. So let's
Indeed,
get
we
out of
have.
here before we do any more damage. All right,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Thank you for listening to and watching. I hope you're
Yeah,
watching.
watching. Yeah.
Watching and
You look
listening and
great. Watch us.
subscribing and liking and sharing and posting the Working on the Dad pod. I'm Alex. That's
I am
Ethan.
Ethan.
We will catch you next time.
See
Thanks, guys.
y'all.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.